When I was in seminary, which was Andover Newton Theological Seminary, I became very close to a man named Virgil Wood, who later became a member of King's team, was invited by King to work in Atlanta. He didn't accept that invitation, but they were very close. Virgil Wood had been the pastor of Bradley Memorial, so he had a strong Vineyard connection while he was in seminary. He did his field work here when it was still in that old location in the mid-50s. We became very friendly. So in '63, in the spring of '63, I wrote to him and I said, I know something big is going on and I want to get involved. So he said, come on down. So I visited him in Lynchburg, Virginia for a week, and King was there, and I met King at that time at nightly demonstrations in Martinsville, Virginia. Then Wood said, you better come to our annual convention. So a colleague and I went to the annual convention of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Richmond, Virginia, and that was in September of '63. Meanwhile, I'd gone to the March on Washington. And so I was really hooked in by now. There were just half a dozen whites amongst about 100 blacks at that convention. So shortly thereafter, I wrote to King in Atlanta and said, we have a group of New England clergy who want to get involved, and where should we go? And I got a call back from his office saying, go to Williamston, North Carolina. The young people there have been demonstrating every night for 80 days with no national attention and suffering a lot of abuse and getting beaten up and harassed in jail and so on. So I got in my car and I drove down to Williamston. And that's when I met Golden Frinks and Sarah Small, because that had been set up. And I stayed in Sarah Small's house for maybe 3 or 4 days. And the purpose of that visit was to make sure they wanted us, to introduce ourselves, and to verify that we were not outside agitators, but we were being invited in. And I got a letter to that effect that they wrote saying, we urge you to come down and join us in our struggle. So I came back north and began to talk to my friends and say, let's do something. And there was very quick response. And Henry Bird was one of them, of Grace Church here, and very, very involved. So we went down with 15 people. We got nonviolent training by Golden Frinks for a couple of days, and then we had our big demonstration, which was pretty simple. A couple of people had made crosses to walk along with, and we had about 80 people in the demonstration, 15 of us white, and the rest were all black young people. And we marched from the church where we'd been meeting every day, maybe a quarter of a mile to the town hall. We had been enjoined by the state from demonstrating, so we had an injunction that we could not demonstrate. The streets were absolutely lined with highway patrolmen, almost shoulder to shoulder, the whole quarter mile on both sides, with such hostile appearance that we weren't quite sure whether they were to protect us or destroy us. But there was enough press, and there was national press going along with us, that we were safe. So we were all arrested for demonstrating without a permit and booked and went into jail. We were able to get out almost any time we wanted because the black adult citizens were quick to contribute money for bail. They were not quick to appear in person because their own situation would be jeopardized, seriously jeopardized. Whereas the young people, and the movement was almost entirely high school kids, had nothing to lose. In fact, I firmly believe, that the movement was primarily a young people's movement across the South. But the troops who did all the work, if you see the movies, in the background, it's the kids that are getting the water hoses and the dogs. And so it was really a children's movement. So we got out of jail one by one, depending on who we thought would be valuable outside and who would be valuable inside. So this was before Thanksgiving in '63. And actually Kennedy was killed while we were there. When the news of Kennedy's assassination came, I was walking along a rural road, and 2 or 3 kids came to me and told me, and they said, we're all going to the church. The church had become such a home for them, and that was in the afternoon. We're all gathering in the church, so we all went there and had a spontaneous service which they led. But it had a deep, deep quality, life-giving quality to it, this whole movement, which doesn't repeat very much. Yeah. Or it becomes so ritualized that it doesn't have that same power. It was new, it was world-shaking. You know, it was part of a national movement that they felt they really shared in. It was strong stuff. Little steps to a great success. They were a little part of a big project, and they respected that role. The inspiration, of course, was King. A lot of the songs incorporated King's name. King was really, he was just an ordinary person on whom history imposed a huge role, and he rose to that occasion. He was prepared. I don't think he ever imagined what he was prepared for, but he was. It's quite an interesting story, the fact that he admired Gandhi and had studied nonviolence. There's one night that early on when he was in Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, when he got a phone call in the middle of the night saying, not only are we going to kill you, which he'd heard often before, but we're going to kill your wife and your children. And he said that was the time he really had to struggle. Am I really committed to this or not? You know, am I ready for this or am I not? And so by the end of the night, he said, yeah, I'm ready. And Virgil Woods told me early on, he knows he's going to be killed. There's no question in his mind that he won't survive this. But he won't step back. He'll stick with it. So.
Did he ever come to Williamston?
I doubt it. He came to Boston a number of times. We did a big fundraiser for him in Boston, probably about 65. We raised $100,000 in Boston. And he said, other cities have raised more money, but this is the most money we ever got because they took their overhead and we didn't take any overhead.